Okay, so right now we're going to talk about culinary R&D, culinary development at a restaurant. We are so lucky to have Jason with us from Habit Burger, and we're going to talk a bit about, this is the fun area that I think a lot of students are interested in, and maybe hooks them into restaurants is, creating a menu item, being able to create something delicious and all that. But there's so much more that goes into culinary R&D. So Jason, if you can tell us a bit about yourself, and then what does your actual job entail day to day?
Yeah, no worries. So I'm Jason Trial. I'm originally from New York. That's why I talk funny. I'm now the director of culinary innovation at The Habit. I've been in the business for 38 years. I started off at age 12. No one in my family is in this business, especially when I was at that age. I was just an ambitious young kid. So I've done everything from restaurants, catering, wine dinners, cigar dinners, cooking classes, all the way up to where I took a leap of faith, and then I left the restaurants and I learned I had a fresh meal kit company where I'm shipping throughout the U.S. I did liquid nitrogen with cryogenic tumbling for CPG food products, and then I did extended shelf life with MAP packaging, which is modified atmosphere packaging, for extended shelf life for ready to heat and ready to cook meals in retail. So now being back in the restaurants at the Habit, I get to play with all these amazing products, create really appealing brands to the mass audience that goes on a national/international basis.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned a lot of science in your background or a lot of technicality. What is that part of food? Knowing you mentioned packaging, nitrogen, shelf stable, all of these things. So, what is the role of science in culinary development?
So today in 2024, science over the last, I would say, 1 to 2 decades has really accelerated in the food industry. I personally I have never went to culinary school. I worked my way up. Hard knocks is what I call it. I didn't know anything about liquid nitrogen, but one thing about this industry, and remember these words, you are forever a student. So science, I embraced it so much. I worked with food scientist on a flavor profile was teaching me things from, hey, yeast extract, for example, delivers the umami flavor almost like
Mhm.
MSG, but it's clean, it's natural, it doesn't have MSG in it. So I learned a lot from a science on a flavor profile, shelf life study, organoleptic studies. Organoleptics is a fancy word of manufacturing of doing sensory evaluations where you're studying it every day, seeing how far you could extend shelf life within science. You could also use inhibitors like vinegar, where you're increasing the pH, which is the acid that actually extends the shelf life of products. But so for me, what I've learned is science is tremendous in this industry. And if you could learn it, learn as much as you can. Packaging, for example, there's different packaging from polypropylene to aluminum trays and different plastics on how food actually interacts within the simplicity of just packaging that people don't even think about.
Well, you do need to think about that, especially
Yeah.
in increasing to go and off premise. That's what you call food that's not eaten in a restaurant. You have to think, how are your fries going to hold up in this container for the next 20 minutes till you get home? Are they still going to taste good?
1,000%. Or if you're putting hot product in it, is it going to damage the container? And now you have other issues because now you have maybe cross contamination because now
Mm.
this plastic's melting and now it's getting into the food. So there's all these lenses that you got to continue to challenge yourself and challenge others around.
Ah, we froze a bit. Come on back. So I'll wait for Jason to come back. But yeah, the food packaging and the supply chain and how are you going to get that product in? What's the creative product you're making? How are you getting it to the guests? These are all things that you might not consider when you're thinking about culinary
Oh,
R&D. All
I think
right,
you
now
just
we're back.
froze. I'm
I
so
filled the
sorry.
time for you. Don't worry. What I also want to talk to you about in your job trends. So,
Yeah.
um, we talked to somebody in marketing about their role with LTO creation and trends and keeping up with what the consumer wants. So, what is your role in monitoring and responding to trends?
Yeah, so I've become a big trend person. Earlier on in my career, we didn't have access to a lot of the data trends. I am very passionate about data. Data, you want to understand who's your audience, who is your customer, who is your guest, right? And what are they looking for? You got to understand the difference between Gen Zs and millennials and, and all the different, age groups that are out there, and then demographics, okay? So if you're creating like this one cuisine of this global flavor, it may work in one region, but may not work in the other. So how do
Totally.
you work with that? And then on an ingredient level, what's polarizing versus what's relevant to people. So data is very critical when you're doing any type of research and development.
Do you have any sneak peeks at trends on the horizon that we can think about?
Yeah, so for example, like we use Data Essentials. That's a really good platform. I'm sorry, we use Technomics, and I also have Data Essentials that I have on my own personal. So with that, I'm always looking at that data. And so, like for example, my approach to shakes, okay, when I first got here, I was like, we only have a couple units on the East Coast in New Jersey, let's just say. So what I saw in some in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I started Googling and I was like, huh, what's the top 10 like shakes in Pennsylvania? And I believe it was chocolate. But then when I went to Jersey, it was pistachio. So when I
Whoa.
spoke to my internal marketing team, I said, hey, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but hey, let's have some dialogue. If we're going to target a new market and we want to generate more buzz, we should do some research of what's trending there. So if we launched a new LTO like a pistachio shake, it's going to create buzz to that new region. So that's kind of like an example of how we start looking at from a demographic as well as what's trending within that region. But overall, when it comes to flavor profiles, if it's burgers, I do white paper concepts and I fully cost them out in the very beginning. So you got to look through all those lenses. Once it's on white paper and I get approval, we put it through data concept testing and insights. So I submitted 18 burgers. It came back. What are the top eight? Those are the ones I'm now going to commercialize. And then once that's done, then we're going to put it and we sign off on it. We're going to put it through data again. And out of that eight, the top four will probably go into test. So that's a lot
And
of
you
data.
probably have certain locations that you test things at, right? That have the right demographics, and you test it only in like two or three restaurants, not all hundreds of your restaurants at once.
Correct. We actually do about 20 restaurants in our testing phase before it goes to our national launch. And we also want to make sure that those locations are also have the right mindset when it comes to being a testing facility, because you want them to embrace it. You want to get that raw, honest feedback versus if it's in a location where they're not really driven by that, maybe you're not getting the right feedback. So you want to make this a tribal effort and where no one's working in vacuums and everyone's really on the same page with buy-in.
I think what people might be surprised at is they'll see a new menu item or something that's buzzworthy and they think, oh, that just came about. But really, it's probably been 18 months, 12 months. I don't know. What's your lead time to getting a new product to market?
So right now I am speed to market. Okay. My speed to market right now is the products that we're launching that I have in the pipe that came back from data insights. So now I know which ones I'm working on these new burgers. Some of them are like char melts, we're calling it, cool name.
Hmm.
And so our goal is to get this into test by June, and then it's going to launch by closer towards like probably Q3, Q4 of this year. But
So for
before
students, Q3, Q4, that's quarter three and quarter four, so the later parts of the year.
later parts of the year, correct. Now, before I could get that into a test phase, I need to get my executive team to sign off on it, which I have March 21st. So I literally have less than 2 weeks because I just got back to data because we're a little bit behind right now because I'm just currently in this role. So there was a gap. And so we're going to accelerate this one. And then I'm also working on long-term strategy for 2025. So you work in parallel work streams, speed to market, and then the long term is intellectual property, where we're going to be creating ingredients and working with vendors that are going to reverse engineer my formulas of here it is at call it a gallon of sauce. How do you now manufacture it to 10,000 gallons in a production?
And make sure that that same sauce has the exact same profile in a store in Jersey versus
Yes.
Santa Barbara versus Cincinnati.
Yes. We
Yeah.
call that we call that here one habit, one sound.
Oh, I like that.
That's pretty
Great.
cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the time. I don't think anybody fully appreciates just the complexity of getting a new product to market. Like you mentioned, it has to go through marketing, finance, data, testing in the store operations. Like, can this burger actually be produced using the equipment that you have and the talent that you have? Um, and then getting it to market and then seeing how it does, ideating again, and rinse and repeat. So that is quite complicated. And I love that discussion about the packaging and the science as well. So a lot
Yeah.
that you have to think about.
And then a couple other parts of that engine is your supply chain.
Ah,
Supply
we didn't even talk about that. Yes.
working with the vendors, and you got to understand MOQ. MOQ stands for minimum order quantity. So
Mm,
if you're a chef and you want to create this great thing, but the minimum order quantity you can't hit, now you got to figure out, okay, well, how do we work through that? And then on top of that, you have food safety and QA, quality assurance. So you also want to make sure that any critical control points, food safety is all buttoned up. To your point, Erin, it's not just one location, it's a national launch, it's every facility. How do you set up the training? So it all comes back down to training on top of
yes, which we talked to HR this morning. Yes. So now we're circling back to training. Yes.
that. It's all those pieces, it all adds up, and it's all the little details.
It's all the little details. And supply chain, to your point, gets so tricky because, we've had, especially in COVID, I think it became very clear that if you're known for your turkey sandwiches, but there's this massive turkey shortages, oh my God, what do you do? Or avocados are now triple in price, or eggs are 10 times the price. It's quickly, can you talk about that, managing that kind of supply chain uncertainty?
Yeah, so when it's really out of your control, you're just transparent with your customers. If you have to substitute out a product, you always want to make sure if you're substituting something, you got to meet the same quality, if not exceed it. You really don't want to bring in substandard product. If you'd rather 86 it, meaning take it off your menu versus serving someone a substandard product. There's an old saying, would you feed this to your family? If you would feed this to your family, then that means you're signing off that that is good quality
That's amazing.
for all the challenges.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jason, for the time and good luck with that March 21
Thank you. I'm going to need it. I'm going to need
deadline.
some of
We
your
can't wait to
students to
try these
help.
melts on the menu.
Yes, it's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.